Hey guys, this is Hieroglyph Games and I'm coming to you with a video tutorial for creating Fibermesh hair inside of Zbrush. This will be going over tips and tricks and how you can control the hair a lot easier, since a lot of tutorials out there don't really cover like how to control the hair. I thought it'd be a great idea to kind of like do my own tutorial, and hopefully you guys will appreciate and it'll help you out as much as you possibly need. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to show you is that I did this hair. It took me about 5 hours. I'm not the greatest hairstylist in the world. I honestly am still learning to do hair, but you know, I ended up doing this and it only took me around like 5 hours to do. I'm still working on it and still figuring it out, but yeah, I just wanted to show you guys that I wasn't incompetent and I kind of know what I'm doing when it comes to Fibermesh. So yeah. So basically the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create a hair cap, and this is basically so the reason why I create a hair cap is because if I have like a character and I want to do like multiple hairstyles on the character, then I can actually go in and I can actually use this as like a density map. You don't have to do this, but it's just something that I like to do. You can either, you know, do that, or you can mask off the, you know, the character's head and then just, you know, grow the fibers from there. But I like to do this because it's just a little bit quicker. So the next thing that you're going to want to do is add polygroups to your hair cap. Now you can do that several thousand ways inside of Zbrush, which is why I love Zbrush so much. But you can actually control mask on the mesh, control W. You can go to your select lasso in your selection brush settings. You can go control shift, go over to your selection brush settings, set it to mask lasso, grab that, control W. And you can also now create paint, which is awesome. And you can sit there and you can mask this stuff out. Let's say that I want a polygroup in here. We can go to here, fill the object, fill the object. So we have black and white, and then we can go to here and we can go to polygroup it. Now what that'll do is it will create a polygroup and separate polygroups depending on where you put this this poly paint at, which is very nice. So there's a million ways that you can do what you got to do to get polygroups inside of, or excuse me, on your hair cap. So pretty much what I ended up doing for a hair cap was I ended up you know, just kind of making some silly little, you know, design, made a side mesh, made some little a little part down here, little side area right here as well, made a little bit of a part right here, made some bang parts, made this big old part right here, and yeah, that's what it looks like. So after you're done with that, you want to just mask off the entire thing and then go to your Fibermesh and then hit preview. What that'll do is it'll come up with your Fibermesh options, and then you can go in here to your modifiers and change your options accordingly to what you need. So I put a lot of these at 0 because I can go in and I can change the length, I can change the shape and stuff like that. I can do what I need to do fairly quickly just by using the brushes instead of doing it in here. And not only that, but a lot of this stuff becomes irrelevant, like the twist, revolve, and all that. It all becomes irrelevant as soon as you start combing the hair. So you know, it's really it really doesn't matter if you set these or not, because once you start combing the hair, it's gonna just be, you know, combed out. So you'll just be wasting time unless you're doing like an animal with short hair that isn't going to be really combed. Then I mean, you know, go ahead and go for it. But pretty much other than that, it's just kind of irrelevant. I put my coverage up to like 55, put my max fibers down low, and turned everything to 0. And that just allows me to get a little bit thicker hair and not have as many fibers on the stuff. I also saved this out. If you guys want to copy these settings, you can go right ahead, but I also saved it out as my own fiber mesh, my own fibers. You want to make sure that you do that. If you have, like, you know, your perfect kind of like settings, you save it out immediately and put it somewhere, or you can go into the light box and choose one of their many different types of fibers that they have in here. We're not going to go over that, but pretty much like this one, maybe this one for afros. You know, just check them out and you know, see if you like them and stuff like that. So once you're done with that, you're going to hit accept, and it's going to accept it. Also, you want to change your segments. Make sure that those are high, or at least a good amount. The reason why is because you don't want your hair to be like hay. You don't want it to be very angular, especially when you're combing it, because it'll look very terrible. And also the profile, when you start bumping this up, it starts to create tubes instead of strips. What that means is basically like these are all strips right now, but if you were to start to raise this, it would start to subdivide it into smoother tubes. Yeah, so you make sure that's low too, especially if you're doing like just kind of like regular hair, because you don't want to overdo it with all these settings and crash your computer. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And then you hit accept, and then it'll ask you if you want to go into fast preview. If you accidentally hit no in the fast preview, don't worry, you can actually go over to your preview settings and turn that on right here. And then also, if we go into my fibers, if I hit accept, you can go in here and you can see that we can, oops, fiber, where are you? There you are. You can go into your settings. You can turn off fast preview or turn it back on. You can also lower the amount of strands or guides that you see. So these are now guides. These aren't actual strands anymore, because when you're previewing, they turn into guides. But when you stop previewing, that's when they start turning into the actual hair. This is good for if you want like a kind of like quick render, or kind of like a quick idea of what your hair is actually looking like. The reason why you would drop these low is because if you actually go in and comb these, the hair will follow these individual guides, and you'll have just a little bit more control. So if I actually go in here and let's say I want to I use my move brush, and then I start to kind of move these, you know, in this direction. Like maybe I just want to, it's a little bit hard to grab onto at first, but you know, once you start to do this, you can actually, you know, see that it's actually making a change. You can see that it's starting to make a change in this area. So it's very nice for that kind of thing. You know, so that way you're not combing a whole shit ton of, you know, hair guides. I like to kind of drop this down a little bit low, like around maybe 30, just so that I'm not over encumbered with a bunch of guides that I have to, you know, comb at the same time. Also, for every single brush that you have inside of Fibermesh, or excuse me, inside of Zbrush, you have an option called Fibermesh in those brushes. So if you actually go into your brush, bring that over, and then look through here, you'll see that there is an option or a menu called Fibermesh. Now, we're going to go over a lot of these. I'm not going to go over every single one of them. Well, maybe I will. But basically, what this does is it allows you to preserve the length. So if you see, if I try to comb this out, you'll notice that the strands are getting longer and longer and longer. Yeah, so pretty much if you change this to about 100, you'll just be basically combing the hair. You will no longer be like, you know, it'll turn into a groom brush pretty much. You'll no longer be sculpting or moving it outwards. It'll turn basically into a generic, or not really a generic, but a you know, a better groom brush, because the groom brushes that are in here are kind of just really crazy. So you know, not a lot of people use them, especially me. I don't really like them that much. But yeah, if you turn this on and maybe you want to use like a snake hook, so as you can see, I'm moving it out and it's making it really terrible. But if I turn off RGB and then I go into preserve volume, it starts to turn it into an actual like full-on groom brush. And the reason why this is great is because these brushes no longer like are, you know, they're not being used in their actual function. They're being used as a groom brush, but they're kind of keeping that ability that they have, like that you're used to. So if I'm used to pulling out the snake hook and, you know, dragging it all this way, well, guess what? That's going to do that to the hair now. So you can kind of like get in there and kind of like sculpt the hair a lot easier. As you can see, it's a lot easier to do. So forward propagation, I believe, means that if you're combing the hair, it'll start to pull the hair away from the tip. So if we actually turn this up to 2 and we start to comb, you'll notice that it's starting to basically push the hair away from the tip. It's going crazy because it's not really like sure what to do, but you can see it's like starting to actually like brush the hair away from the tip, and it keeps the hair away from the tip pretty much. It tries to straighten it out, I think, and it's insane for that. So You know, that's pretty much what it's doing. It's like basically trying to straighten out the hair and try to push it away from the tip. Whereas this one is the opposite, where it tries to curl the hair in towards the tip. So you want to remember these settings because sometimes they can be useful depending on what you're trying to do with the hair. Stiffness. So this is actually pretty cool. So if you've ever like tried to comb the hair and you'll notice that all of the hair is like starting to like basically you know, separate and move away from each other, and they're trying to like do their own thing, which can sometimes be annoying. So if we're combing it like this and you well, I mean, I guess it's not really showing much, but basically you'll have like these little flyaways that'll be like really annoying. But if you actually turn this up to about 50, then the hair will stop doing that and it'll start to be like more kind of like straight. And it'll start to try to stay together as much as possible. So it's really nice for that. You don't want to turn it all the way up because then you'll just have completely straight hair, and then you know you won't be able to have any like control. So you want to kind of like keep that around like 50. Front collision, I turn these all the way off. The reason why is because this is basically like, you can have it really low, but I turn it all the way off because basically what it does is it makes the hair avoid the mesh. And sometimes that's a good thing, especially if you're like finished like shaping the hair, and we'll go over shaping the hair as well. But when you're finished shaping the hair and you want the roots to be outside of the mesh, then you can turn this up really low, like maybe like 3 or so, or 5. And turn this down to around 3, and that'll basically keep the roots above the head, but it'll allow you to sculpt the mesh a little bit easier, so that the strands aren't going and popping away from the mesh really quickly. And if you guys have been working with you know, Fibermesh, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But just to give you kind of an idea as to what I'm talking about, we're going to turn this off, and let's just turn this all the way back to, I think it was like at 75, and then we'll try to like comb this down. And what'll end up happening is the hairs will actually like try to avoid, I think this one was maybe like at, was it 25 or so? But the hairs will try to like avoid, as you can see right here. Now, this is sometimes a good thing, but it's really sucky because if you want a certain hairstyle and it starts to do this, it's really hard to get rid of that. So that's why I kind of like turn this all down, especially if I'm doing like long hair. And then what that'll allow me to do is it'll allow me to groom straight through that, and then I can adjust it later on. So I can sit there and I can say, well, I want this hair to be outside of the ear, and I can then like kind of like smoothen that down. And we can also turn, if we hold shift, we can turn on preserve link to the smoothing brush, and that'll give us kind of like a generic kind of like smoothing brush that'll allow us to kind of do that. So I also like to keep the stiffness up to about 75 on the smoothing brush, because you'll notice that as soon as I start like smoothing out, these start to curl upwards, which is sometimes annoying. But if you keep that low, the strands should try to stay with the mesh as much as possible. You'll also get an option over here called spring, and what this is basically doing is it's trying, as soon as you comb the mesh, it'll pop back into place. The fibers will pop back into place a little bit, you know, because that's pretty much what, you know, spring means. It'll basically bounce back into place. So if we do this, and we try to kind of comb it out, it should try to, no, not gonna pop back into place. Oh, you know what, let's try this. There we go. So you'll notice that it has like a little bit of a springy kind of step to it, and you can see that all of the mesh, all the stuff kind of like sprung back into place. This is really good for like, you know, combing fur and stuff like that, you know, because you can sit there and you can like do this, and you can see that it's kind of like combing fur. It's kind of like combing like short kind of hair. So it's really good for that. But since we're combing long hair, we're going to turn this back down to 50, and then turn this off. So now we can sit there and we can comb this. Now, I like to use certain brushes for certain features. So like, you know, you can use the inflation, I believe. Preserve length. Inflate these. And you can inflate them outwards. As you can see, you can inflate them out. I mean, you can do all kinds of stuff with all of the grooming brushes. I mean, look at that. That's crazy. You can also use the pinch brush with a preserve length to clump all of this up. So if we sit there and we go like this, maybe even turn this up to 100. Oh shit, that's a little too much. You can sit there and you can clump it up and you can create all kinds of crazy like designs. Let's turn that down a lot more. Jesus Christ, that was fucking... Yeah, there we go. It's a lot more clumpy. So, you know, of course, you know, if you're doing this, you want to kind of do this by, you know, maybe you want to just, I just want to clump up that, you know, maybe just turn that back down. Jesus Christ. It's so freaking, like, strong. It's crazy. Go back into your move brush. Maybe move this out. You can see this is awesome because the roots are staying where they are. You know, you can sit there and you can literally use the sculpting brushes to kind of help you out. So you have to think of like the fibers as like a rope that it's tethered to a tree. So if I want the hair, if I want the tip to be over here and I want it to kind of do a little swooping motion, because I'm trying to visualize in my head, I want to do like a swooping motion right through here. You could use the, you know, the curve, or excuse me, the spiral. And you can also think of grooming like a rope. So this part's tethered. This is the part of the rope that's tethered, and then the tip is the one that moves. So what we need to do is we need to bring the tip over first, and then we need to adjust the midsection to be that little kind of like swooping kind of thing. So kind of like that. That's how you control hair a little bit better in Zbrush. So we can bring the tips down here. We can then smoothen these out, smoothen out the tips. You know, and all of that jazz. So we can sit there and we can move that, smoothen it, maybe bring it back out just a little bit more, and it's really awesome. You can see that like you're controlling it a lot easier in Zbrush. Really awesome. So it's just, it takes a lot of practice to be able to do this. Let's do this. What the fuck? There we go. We can just sit there and we can edit this. Now, of course, hair has a lot of variation to it, especially like if I go to this one, you can see I made a lot of variation in my hair. But this one doesn't have a lot of variation, so what you could do is you can mask these off by going like this, or what you can do is you can just go Control Shift, lasso select, and you can make a lot of these visible. And then you can go into your pinch brush, you know, clump these up. Let's just smoothen that down. Oh my god. There we go. And then we can move this around, just giving it a little bit more variation. And now you can see like we can go in there, we drag this out a little bit more and just have like a little bit more variation. It makes it look a little bit more realistic. Now of course it's not long enough, so we can go BG, and then there will be a brush called Lengthen. I like to use Lengthen with a low intensity, and then also turning off all of this stuff, and then making the stiffness about 50. And this is going to give us a nice kind of like lengthen brush that we can kind of like go in there and maybe we want to, you know, just ever so slightly lengthen it up. And then kind of move it. Don't try to groom it with the lengthen brush, just lengthen it up. And then what you can do is just go back into your grooming, your own specific grooming brushes, and just go in there and, you know, move it around and whatnot. And it just gives it a lot more variation. Now if you want to actually, you know, turn this into a polygroup, Control W, turn that into a polygroup, and you can actually edit that for later. So you can grab onto that. You can be like, oh, well, I want to edit that for later. Maybe I don't really like the way it looks. Maybe I want the tip to be a little bit more in, you know, a little more shape to it. you know, then you can sit there and you can do that, and boom, you got a lot more you know, shape to your stuff and a little bit more control. And that's pretty much all it is. And you just do that, you know, section by section until you have a really awesome hairdo. So hopefully this has helped you guys out. If it did, please leave a like and you know, share, subscribe. And if you guys have any questions or comments or anything like that, criticisms, let me know down below, and I will see you guys in the next video, which will be about sculpting female faces again, because you know, I wanna do an update video as to, you know, better workflow, easier workflows and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and you guys have an amazing day, and create some awesome hair. Take care, guys.